Hi guys, here we are with another episode of Wings of Utu. So in this episode we are going to cover remote notification. By the end of these two episodes you're going to be able to build an application for macOS, iOS and iPadOS that receives remote notification, can register for it. Also, we're going to develop a backend that would be responsible for sending notification to all the users or specific ones depending on how you set it up. Let's dig in. All right, so the first thing we need to do, we need to build an identifier for our mobile application. Well, our app in general, doesn't matter whether it's iOS or macOS. So you log into your portal, make sure you selected the correct profile, then go to the identifier section, click on plus, select app ID, click on continue, select app and continue. And then you can give it a name. I'm going to call it remote push notification, or RPN for short. And I'm just going to say uk.wingsofutu.rpn. Keep it explicit. So there are a bunch of things that you can enable for your application. We just want to enable remote notification or push notification. So you just click that and say continue. And if everything goes well, these texts disappear and then you can just click on register. And now you have your identifier. Next thing you need to do is to create a key. So in the modern Apple world, you don't have to create a key for each one of your application or do any of those things. Under the key sections, I already created one called Master Push Notification. But the idea is you click on the plus, you give it the correct name, and you select Apple Push Notification. You can select all of these things. Obviously, these are different services that you can go for. But for the purpose of this, you simply just select your name and then click on Apple Push Notification. And you click on continue. And it will tell you we're going to create a key for you, which enable you to run Apple Push Notification. And you can click on register. And as a result of this, it will create a key ID for you. Make sure you write it down. And you can download this. Remember, when you download this, you can only download this once. If you delete it or randomly something happened to it, you have to do all these steps again and create one. So you can click on download and then download it on your download folder and you'll be done with it. So that's the part you need to do in order to do the basics from Apple perspective, developer side of things. Once you've done that, you can now go back to your Xcode. Make sure you're running the latest version of Xcode, and select the multi-platform. Click on App, press Next. Here you have to make sure you select the profile that you've selected on your Apple portal. You might be subscribed to multiple platforms. Just select the one you want to be associated with. Make sure this organization identifier basically matches with the identifier that you made. So in this case, this is the identifier. So I'm going to copy that and make sure to paste it here. I'm going to call this RPN. Obviously you don't have to do it twice because it automatically add the product name to the end of your bundle identifier. We don't need any storage. Keep that as it is. Click next. Let's just go with the document and create. Take a few moments to create your project. Fantastic. So now we have our project running. You can ignore this repository. At this stage, you can select the iPhone or you can select the simulator. So I'm going to select iPhone Pro Max here because I got it open here. So let's see how that looks. It's just compiling the application. So while it's compiling, you're going to go to the root of the project. So in here, there is a section called signing and capabilities. So you have to obviously make sure that one is selected. And if you look at the application, there is these are all the permissions that you're giving to your app. If you click on the capabilities, there should be a section for this called push notification, just like what we did on the Apple's developer portal called push notification. And obviously, when you click on this, it will enable remote push notification for iOS, macOS, watchOS, tvOS, what have you, basically all the platforms. So you just double tap on it. Given that we already done all the hard work on the portal enabling this, it'll just easily get added to the project file. So we're all good to go in terms of all the things that you have to do outside of the Xcode. Next thing is to set our application. So first thing we need to do is look at the content view. Obviously there's like a little icon of globe with the text, so we don't need any of that. We're simply going to have a button. And I'm just going to get rid of these previews so we have more space to look at the code. So we're going to have this button. And obviously there's action and there's a label. So the action is going to be something basically, we're going to request permission. In this section, I'm just gonna put a text and say request for remote notification, for example. Easy, right? So if you look at the project file, obviously we have a root or the main function, which runs this content view, which is the genesis of our application. And then in here, we just simply have a button. So let's run this again, just make sure our UI works. Obviously, the purpose of this is not really UI. We're just trying to get all the mechanics behind the remote push notification. So we have a button and you can press on it. Great. Next thing we need to do, we need to define a delegate for our app. So generally, I would describe delegate as a deal breaker between your mobile application and operating system. So a lot of things could happen to your app depending on the state of the OS and vice versa. So this delegate is going to be handling all of those things. So let's create a class. I'm going to call it app delegate. And I'm going to put it right on the main function. So class app delegate is going to extend from NS object. That is like the basic, it's like in terms of hierarchy, that is like covering all the basic stuff for comparison, things like that. So that's like a generic class that you have to extend from. And I'm gonna make it singleton by saying static var shared equal app delegate. Perfect. This way I make sure there's only one instance of this application, this class. Next thing you need to do, you need to tell the app that, all right, I have this app delegate and I want it to be responsible for everything I do. So how you would do that is you have to make sure that your delegate is also extending from relevant classes. So how you do this, let me just add this to the app section. So in here, you just add two macros. So for iOS, you will say iOS, if it's iOS and iPadOS, basically, we will use this at UI application delegate adapter. And for macOS, we use this. In both of these cases, we are calling the same class. You might see this and say, what's the point of this? If it's the same class, why not just have one instance? Obviously, you need to have this prefix before the actual app delegate. And even when you do that, it still complains about requiring app delegate to conform to UI application delegate. So to fix this, we go back to the delegate. We extend this class from UI application delegate. That's for iOS. And we're gonna extend this class again from NS application delegate, right? But when you do this, you have to make sure that you're telling the OS that this bit is just for iOS, and this bit is just for macOS. This way it would not complain about the state of it. So let's go to that. Yeah, perfect. Next thing you need to do is you need to make sure you include the two root framework for each one of these platforms. One is for UIKit, that is for iOS and iPadOS. The other one is for AppKit, which is for macOS. So as you can see, this one is a little bit dimmed down because we've selected the iPhone. But if I select macOS in this case, you will see that it will just enable this and disable that. So it tells you that what it's doing. And if I go back to the root, this would not complain anymore. Hopefully it goes away and it's happy. So now we have a delegate, which is our deal breaker between all the services that our application can use. So it's all perfect. Now, next thing we need to do, we need to begin writing our remote notification manager. So I'm going to create a new class. I'll call it a notification manager, right? So let's call it notification manager. And here we have this class. I'm going to say, all right, so I need to have a class called class notification manager. And this object again, we're going to make sure it inherits from that. I would make this again singleton class. And then I'm going to define a function which allows me to request for remote access permission. So this request access is using user notification framework. So you need to import that. The great thing about this is it's a unified framework, which means iOS and macOS using this, so you don't have to separate the two. So what we do here, we just say, use this UN user notification request for the type of notification, that's alert, badges, and sound. And it's all good. That's fine. The only bit is complaining that this thing is complaining about what is this NS object. I don't understand what this is about, because for this you need to import the framework again for macOS and iOS. Make sure these are represented correctly. AppKit again for macOS, UIKit for iOS. So up to this point now, we have a class that allows us to request for a notification, and if user agrees to it, we are good, and we can start basically sending notifications from our server to this phone. So now from this point on, we need to do a couple other things. Once you do this, AppDelegate has certain classes that will get automatically called. This is what I called, that's why I explained that this AppDelegate is going to be between your app and the OS. So let's begin from macOS, for example. The functions that we are going to override here, they're identical between the two. So first thing is, once the user agrees to the push notification, there's a function called did register for remote notification. Exact function has to be override in the iOS section. So remote notification did receive. Again, this is saying NS, that's referring to iOS. No, sorry, macOS. You need to select iPhone or any simulator, and then if you do register, you will see that this changes to UI application. So the only difference between two is just this NS application, which refers to the the macOS section, and this one iOS. There's another function called remote did fail remote notification. That's when it fails. And there is a last section, which is when it receives a notification. Did receive notification. And it has a completion that you can just simply use and say let me just paste this whole thing here. If there's a new data, there's a completion that it just uses it, but you don't need to have this for now. We'll just leave it out. We're going to do the exact same thing for the macOS. So let's just select Mac, override that did fail. So fail remote notification. Great. Next thing is we're going to print out the error if there isn't an error. So I'm just going to say error dot localized, and we're going to have the same thing in here. Next thing that is really important is this register bit. So once the user requests for their notification and the user agrees to receiving one, what this function does, it communicates with Apple. As a result of all this communication, it returns a unique device token, which allows you to communicate with the device. This token is like a telephone number or email address. And it has to be saved on your application, your backend, if you want to send a push notification to the device. In order to save this, what I'll do, I'll go back to the notification manager. I'm just going to put this class up here and define a new class called store device token. This is just in charge of saving this precious token. And I'm going to use an app storage variable called device token here to store this. And because I'm using app storage, I need to import SwiftUI framework. So I'll make sure that gets there. So simply we have a simple function that saves it. Now let's go back to app delegate. Now we want to save this device token. So we can just say notification manager shared dot store device token, and again just pass in the device token into it. The only thing is, device token, the way this function works, it accepts a string, but this one is just returning back of data. In order to handle that, I'm just going to add extension to be able to convert this data to a string, hexadecimal string. I'm going to add this down here. So basically what it does, it just maps that bag of bits basically into a hexadecimal string that can be saved. And then I'm going to use this at the end of this. I just say hexa string. So I'm going to do the same thing for iOS. So up to this point, if the user agrees to have this notification and accepts it, it will produce this long number that we can save. Also, let's print it out so we know what that is. I'm going to say device token equal, and then I'm going to put the same thing on iOS. Just bear in mind, when you're testing this on iOS, you have to do this on an actual device. On the simulator, it does not generate this number. But for macOS, it works fine because you can just simply target your Mac and get it going. Last thing we need to do, we just need to hook up this request for remote notification button to the actual request that we wrote. So we just say notification manager shared request access. Perfect. Now I'm going to target Mac, which is fine. Press next and wait for it. Just ask for my password. And the application should run shortly. I'm gonna expand the log window so you can see what's going on there. Perfect. So this is the application. And look here. If I click on request remote notification, a window will show up on the sidebar, in my case it's on the other screen, asking me to allow for notification. So I can just simply say allow, and because I click on allow, it just says all set, device token is this. This is the unique number that let me to communicate with this instance of the application on this particular Mac. And same will occurs obviously if I run it on my phone. So let's try that as well. Just for the sake of comparison, I'm just going to save this number in the code here. So I'm just going to say macOS, that's the number. I'm going to target my phone, my actual phone, and just say run. And if you do that, it will just take a little longer because you have to build it for iPhone. And let's just give it a few seconds. Right. Now let's have our phone showing up in the Okay, so on the mobile app, if I press on the request button, there will be a page that's saying, would you like to send a notification? I'm going to say yes, allow. And again, as you can see, it's produced another number. I'm just going to put it down here again. iPhone. There's a long number. And it produced. So if you remove the application and install it again, you have to request for a remote notification again, and it will generate another number, another long hexadecimal number that you have to use. So on the next episode, we are going to discuss how to build a new backend with Node.js and allow the backend to publish remote notification to the device. If you have any questions, or if you would like to know more about the backend, or you have suggestions or specific things that you want me to cover, please do let me know in the comment below and subscribe.